Well, let's go ahead and keep talking about more about these viruses and virus-like structures. Uh, Again, I want you guys to just be comfortable with what are viruses, the general features, and then which diseases are viral-based diseases. Don't worry about all the little details. Not what I'm going to test you on, but can you match up? Here's four diseases. Are they viral versus bacterial versus this new category we're going to talk about called viroids and prions? So these are not viral diseases, they're just weird stuff, but they go in kind of in this category of weird things. Um, and for lack of giving them their own classification, we group them with the viruses. So viroids are these small circular RNA molecules that infect plants. Oh, that infect plants. And what they'll do is they will disrupt the plant growth. So they can stunt it, change it. I'll show you some examples in a minute here. Just kind of do some goofy things. As far as we know, viroids do not impact animals. They can't be transmitted to an animal and cause a problem in an animal. The ones that are animal specific are these prions. Okay, so prions are protein-based structures. Oh, get that, make that look better. Protein-based structures that can cause neurological diseases. Basically, it's a misfolded protein. So there's a disease in sheep called scrappy. We have mad cow disease. We have Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease. And I'll talk about a few others in a minute here. And these things can lead to a thing called transmissible spongiform encephalopathy, TSE. Basically, it screws up your neural system, your brain in particular. The protein, so here's a prion. This little prion is a protein, and what it does is when it bounces into another protein, it changes the shape of the other protein. So here's the messed up protein. And then that bounces into one and changes its shape. And this bounces into another one. And what happens is it starts creating these aggregates of prions, misfolded proteins. Now, anybody who went through earlier biology class hopefully remembers the mantra about proteins: shape determines function. So when we talk about proteins, shape equals function. So if you change the shape of a protein, you now change the function of that protein, and it screws everything up. So what happens is this cascade effect where prion screws up the next protein, the next protein, the next protein, and leads to some serious, serious health issues. So we're not completely clear on how these things work. There's concern that it can get transmitted from one organism to another. So this is why we don't eat cows that are infected, sheep that are infected. You don't want to eat a person who's infected. Don't eat the brain tissue, etc. So it can lead to some huge, huge health issues. And I'll show you guys a Central Illinois one that some of you may want to take some note of this and really start becoming more aware of it. So let's go back to viroids for a moment. Viroids, back in the early 2000s, a viroid infection killed 10 million coconut palms in the Philippines, just devastated their coconut industry. So the challenge here is you have this infection that wipes out your coconuts. Do you just replant? But if you do, and the infection is still in your community, it's not going to go away. Now, your next generation of coconuts are infected, and so on and so on. So it can create some huge problems when we talk about agriculture, especially agricultural industries that are monocultures. Like we grow one plant and that's it because that's a huge crop. It can lead to some significant problems. That's one of the concerns about things like corn and beans. If that's all you grow, what happens if you wipe out your corn because of a viroid? So here's some examples. These are actual tomatoes that got a viroid infection. Not real pretty. You'd look and go, ugh, I wouldn't want to eat that. Well, here's the reality. You have ketchup, tomato sauce, pasta sauce, etc. Where do you think those tomatoes go? The nice, bright, perfect red ones go to the grocery store shelves, but the ones that look like that, a lot of times they'll wind up as they call them seconds, and they wind up in the pot processed into any product that uses tomato paste or tomato juice, and we wind up eating it. Weird growth patterns on gourds. Now, this actually may be beneficial. Consumers may go, that's crazy. I love it. I want it. And now all of a sudden you have a new market. Check out the tulip, the yellow striping. That's a viroid infection. Again, it may be beneficial if the florist can sell that tulip at a premium because it's a rare change to the tulip. So viroids can be devastating to agriculture, and in some cases, probably a smaller number, it may be beneficial. Here's some of the other viral infections you'll see. Plants, just the growth pattern is weird. It's off. Odds are it's a viral infection. The good news is, as far as all science knows, this doesn't jump to us. So it's safe to eat. We throw it away, maybe out of precaution, but really it's most likely safe to eat this stuff. And as I mentioned, odds are we've already eaten it when we had dinner or lunch or breakfast, because not all the pretty things are turned into our food. Sometimes the not so pretty things wind up as the food we consume. So, okay, let's take a look at the prions though. As the saying here says, proteins gone rogue. Misfolded proteins have been implicated in a variety of different diseases, and we're still trying to wrap our heads around this. So things like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease, transthyretin amyloidosis. So we don't fully understand this stuff yet. We don't know, why does this happen? Is it environmental trigger? Is it a genetic trigger? That's still not clearly understood. So more research is needed here. But when individuals become infected, they tend to show similar symptoms. So whether it's a cow that has a sheep that has scrappy, or a cow that has mad cow disease, they start losing neural function. So trembling, shaking, can't walk straight. All those are signs that something's wrong with this animal, and it most likely has a prion-based disease. In Illinois, for anybody who's a deer hunter, chronic wasting disease, huge issue. This is in Illinois. It's in the deer herd in Illinois. Chronic wasting is a prion-based disease. It parallels mad cow disease, scrappy, and those others we talked about. This began back in the 80s. Cases showed up out west, as well as a few cases in the early 2000s in Wisconsin and upper northern Illinois. And what we've seen is it slowly progressed down through the state of Illinois. At this point, it has not hit Sangamon or Menard or Logan or Cass counties. But talking to DNR biologists, it's not an if, it's a when does this get here. Some of them think it's already here, we just haven't tested the deer and found deer that have it. So our earliest case in Illinois was 2002, so 18 years. Anybody who's a deer hunter, I encourage you, hit the hyperlinks, check out what's going on in Illinois before you go out for deer season this year. Take a look at it. Is your county a county of risk? If it is, be selective when you're hunting. Can you identify an animal that looks off? Odds are it's difficult. If you saw one that was stumbling and shaking and trembling, kill that deer and call DNR, get a tissue sample and get it tested. I would not eat that animal. But when you're hunting, if you have that opportunity to be selective, try to make sure you're harvesting a healthy animal. You can opt to get the brainstem tested. Now, if you kill that buck there, odds are you're not going to want to cut the skin out and pull part of the brainstem out for testing or send the head in, but that is an option. So there are ways to get our deer tested in Illinois to see, are we at risk? DNR would love it because they use that data to help determine, is this disease here? Is it moving through the deer herd in the central part of the state? What is the risk factor for hunters in central Illinois? Okay, so check out the hyperlinks or go to Illinois DNR, Department of Natural Resources website, and look into it. Again, that concern is, can that jump from those animals to people? Science is not completely clear on that one yet. Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease is a human-based disease. I'd encourage you guys, hit the links, take a look at it, see what it is, learn a little bit more about it. Another human parallel is a disease called Kuru. All these are following the same pattern. Kuru tends to be, you tend to get Kuru by eating brains. So if anybody ever saw the movie Silence of the Lambs with Hannibal Lecter, don't eat the brain. That's a bad thing, okay? So avoid neural tissue if there are concerns about prion-based diseases in the organism you're eating. All right, so some really good stuff out there about this. Take a look at it, get some more knowledge. The last thing to mention in this lecture is the connection between viruses and cancer. So there are some very direct links between viruses and certain types of cancer. HPV virus leads to cervical cancer. Hepatitis B can lead to liver cancer, and so on and so on and so on. Be careful. If you think you have a viral infection, get tested. Check it out. The best thing you can do is be proactive and try to get on that as early as possible to try to limit or minimize any potential long-term health implications from a viral infection. All right, so get familiar with viruses, what they do, how they work, how they play with things, and make sure you avoid the bad ones at all costs. The good ones, yeah, we want to use those for molecular research and genetic engineering. All sorts of good stuff can be done with them. So don't always think viruses are all bad. It's just, what do they contain? That is the bad stuff. That's what we want to know more of, is what's the viral genome and what is that going to do when it gets into the host. So, all right, so let's wrap up viruses. Make sure we're comfortable with this content.